how can any mad powerhouse in the economy can actually be hurting its development of regional talent, you might ask? And here are the reasons why. NA has the competitive advantage of producing large income salary jobs. What that competitive advantage means is people are going to specialize and countries are going to specialize at doing what they do best and what they do cheaply relative to other things. For example, the US is very good at producing medical students there, and it produces them not only cheaply, but it also produces them. Um, they can it can produce them. That's first a must. For example, China can't produce them, or they don't produce as many. So some people come here and they get treatment. That's a bad example because I don't actually know into medical system. But I'm just giving an example. Let's say engineering. We're good at engineering over here, so other countries hire us. Actually, I know this, that financial consulting is actually what America does best, and it's actually a service, not. So NA is pretty good at service because we're trained for that. In other countries, they're not as trained. I'm not saying NA is better by any means. I'm just stating the facts. So how does that relate to leagues? So in NA, companies can either buy local talent or they can buy foreigners for the same amount of price. Whereas Korea doesn't have the option to buy foreign players because they don't pay well. So they just have to foster the regional talent. What that means is that they develop a shit ton of players, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. There are other factors that go into why a region is good or not, but I think this video is going to be about how NA can actually be hurting itself. And so, for example, Europe can't buy a single foreigner outside of Korea. So Europe can't buy NA players. I mean, I'm not really sure if Europe would like to buy players, but they just don't because they're too expensive. Now, NA has money. So NA can just buy Froggen, they can just buy GBM, they can buy Piglet, Impact, and all these high caliber players, Bjorsen, Jensen. They can just buy all these high caliber players and put them in the region instead of just developing the NA talent, which in their own interest is actually kind of a good thing. In the short term, it's a good thing because they're gonna have better results immediately, and it's safer to do so. However, in the long run, you must develop the regional talent in order for your region to win. So, at the micro level, a company is better off by just buying players from foreign region and just buying the best players. But in the long run, there are not going to be any good NA players because everyone just buys foreign talent because they're better and you pay the same price. So sometimes you pay more, but it's just safer and an overall better investment. How does that relate to how NA doesn't develop any talent? Because no one buys talent except for Gravity. I mean, TIP, that they just have they didn't want to basically play this season, so they just bought 5 people. Like, I'm not even sure if they're getting paid. So I think they have one solo queue talent, and I believe he's the only one this season coming in. The only NA rookie that's actually, I think there's one more. I can't remember who it is, but there's one more. And here's the fact: how many mid laners do you think will be on the starting roster for the teams in the NALCS coming season? I'll give you a hint. There are 10 teams, and only 2 players, Paul Belter from Immortals and Shifter from Team Dignitas, that will be starting as their mid laner for the current team. So how does that prove my fact? It proves it because it shows that Europe and Korea are plaguing the NA scene, and they're not giving the chance to other players to, especially NA players, to foster their talent. And if we didn't have the competitive advantage over it, maybe we would develop it. I'm sure in the short run, it would hurt the scene, but in the long run, it can maybe make solo queue more competitive because players' incomes and players' spots on their teams wouldn't be a guarantee because they wouldn't be as good. So in the short run, it might hurt us. In the long run, in the short run, it's positive, but in the long run, it can actually hurt the NA region because no talent is being produced. without further, I hope I gave you some you guys some insight and demand your teams to have regional talent. And what infuriates me the most is that these large organizations are overpaying players like the Echo Fox, the new team that Rick Fox acquired. They're overpaying players, and they're basically it's not their fault, but they don't look at it from a business perspective, and it's actually hurting the scene even more than you guys can think. Because if you think about it, they're overpaying players, so other teams have to overpay players, and it creates an overinflation of player salaries. And what ends up happening is that everyone has to increase their salaries, otherwise they're not going to be able to compete, and their players are going to go to other teams. And so every team pays more, and they don't produce a profit, and they don't get a profit. They don't get any benefit out of it. So ultimately, teams are going to run out of business, and the players are not going to get any money because no one's going to be willing to invest in the scene because there's no profit to be made out of. The teams at the top level probably are going to make TSM and CLG and Cloud9 are probably going to make money. I'm going to make a profit. But these lower tier teams, it's going to be very hard for them to get into the scene and to make a profit because they're overplaying foreigners. They'd be better off, especially for the scene, would be better off by just developing the NA solo queue talent, developing NA players, getting rookies into the scene, and getting actually NA talent into the scene. It's not anything against them. They're pursuing their own self-interest. But I think if there was a Federation of North America League of Legends, then they would probably do that in the interest of the whole region. So I hope they listen and just start a conversation on the topic. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you agree in the comment section.